Hi everyone and welcome to a quick video on colour correction for the DJI Phantom 3. Now this would also apply for your 70D, 80D if you've gone into the picture profiles and turned the contrast down, the sharpness down and the saturation down, which is what a lot of people do when we record video with DSLRs, because the camera in automatic just adds way too much sharpness, way too much contrast, and it crushes the blacks and sometimes we lose the highlights. So this footage you're going to see now is obviously from a DJI Phantom 3, but it would apply if I'd done, like I did a christening the other day and I applied the same procedure. I'm not allowed to show it, so I can't show it, but I did a christening and I applied the same procedure to the footage on that, but obviously that was done with a 60 and 370Ds. So without further ado, I will be doing another video following up to this, which tells you the best settings to use for your DJI Phantom 3, whether it's standard, professional, advanced, and also the best settings for your drone and how to stop it flying away and all this stuff. There'll be a fair few videos coming up, but basically in the drone, in the settings, I turn the contrast down, I turn the sharpness down, and I turn the saturation down, because out of the camera, the drone, don't get me wrong, it looks okay sometimes, but most of the times it's just way too sharp and it just crushes the blacks too much. So this video here was shot at, I think, I'll just go and have a look at the info, I think it was 2.7K, and you can see if we just look at the image on screen, it looks pretty flat. There's no contrast, it just looks, in fact I'll just play full screen for a couple of seconds. You can see it looks milking, it looks a bit crap, but that's because I set the Vlog profile in the camera settings on the drone, and I think it was the, I don't know if it was Cine D profile, one of them anyway, and it gives you a really flat image like this. You will see the video and I'll explain that. So I'm going to tell you how to adjust an image, well, an image, I'm going to call it an image, but it's a video, how to adjust an image using the curves and the levels, the display, so that your eyes don't perceive you to think that it's bright enough when it actually isn't, because a lot of people see brightness levels at different levels. So you might go over to your friend and your camera's set at, I don't know, 30th of a second f4 at ISO 400, and he might be at ISO 100 or 200 and think that it looks bright enough to hit him. So if we command 7 on the keyboard, you'll see that we've got the Luma curve up in Final Cut. And if we actually look at the, imagine this as an histogram rotated on its back. This is the shadows, this is the midtones, this is the highlights. And we're going to use this really to adjust the contrast and the highlights and stuff on this video. We're not going to use just looking at the video and adjust it, because that just comes down to personal preference in what you like. But if you crush the blacks too much and you play it back on certain devices, it may look a real bag of crap if you've actually crushed them way beyond zero. I mean, you might do it and think it looks good to your eye, but it'll look a bag of rubbish on a TV. So if we look, we can see we've got a little bit of clipping up the top here on the highlights, and we've got no contrast whatsoever. So we're going to go fix that now. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to type colour, and I'm going to add a colour correction to the first clip. And I'm also going to add a sharpness filter. Remember when I told you that I turn the sharpening right down on the drone? So now I'm going to re-add it back. And on the one in Final Cut, I'm going to change it to 1.5. Now, it depends what you do. If you're using Premiere Pro, you can still bring your histogram or your curves or whatever up your Luma in Premiere Pro and do the same thing. It's just that the settings won't be the same. But that's the one I've chose, 1.5 on the sharpness. So if we now go over to the colour correction, it's actually done nothing. And this is the highlights, this is the midtones, and this is the shadows, right? I don't know why it keeps bugging doing that, look. So if we now bring the highlights down, there you go. So I've now brought the highlights down. So basically I've got no clipping on the highlights, but I've still got no contrast. So we'll now bring the shadows down for contrast. just get nice and close up, and we've got something like that. And if we look at this, forget the image for a minute, let's look at the histogram. I might put the highlights back up a minute. If we look at the Luma curve here, you can see now that we've got blacks, we've got midtones, and we've got highlights. So no matter what we see this right image at, if our eyes are saying, oh, it's still really bright, it actually isn't. It's actually in the ballpark by looking at this here. Don't get me wrong, you can go a little bit more with curves. You could, I mean, you won't want to go right down here because you've lost all detail, but you could still really push it. I mean, what did we start with here? You could really you could go something like this if you wanted to and really come down. And you can, I mean, looking at the image, you can see there's detail in my jeans. My hair looks okay. There's nothing else there that looks bad. I mean, you could have it at that. Let's just leave it at the sake of that. So we've fixed the exposure. We've added the contrast. I'm now going to go to the saturation. Now, this is not really a correction that you do every time, but it is because I turned the saturation down in the quadcopter's picture profile. So we'll just pump that up a little bit just to boost those colours. And that's pretty much it. Although on this image now, this has nothing to do with correction. I'm just going to warm up the highlights a little bit. Just a right little touch. Ever so slightly, and we'll go like that. I'll now Command 7 and we'll hide the, I'll just click down here and we'll turn the effects on and off. And you can see, looking at the image, it looks absolutely, it looks nice, it looks corrected. It may have looked very similar out of the drone, but I'll guarantee you there'd have been a lot more contrast on it and a lot more sharpness. And you can see if we just play it back, I'll just full screen it now. It looks absolutely A++. By the way, with the DJI Phantom 3, you don't need no stabilisation on the footage. It's absolutely perfect. All you've really got to do is correct it if you've chose the Cine D and the Vlog profile in your camera settings and you've turned the saturation down. In fact, I don't think it is Cine D. It's Vlog is the profile, and then under the style is Vlog, I think. Then it's the picture profile is Vlog. Under the style, you turn the contrast down, the saturation down, and the sharpness down, and you get this. You get to be able to colour grade it yourself afterwards. Now, what we're going to do here to save time, I'm going to Command C, and I'm going to copy the effects, the sharpness and the colour correction to these other two clips. We'll just click off there. And you can, look, if we'll just look at that clip now and turn the effects off, on. You can see that it's fixed that too. But we also need to check, because it's a different scene in a different place, we need to check that it's not crushed. I'm happy with the saturation and all that, but I just need to check my blacks and my highlights to make sure that we've not clipped. So I'll Command 7, and you can see here that we've got a highlight and we've actually got a 0 point. So it's actually okay. But what I'm going to do on this one, if you look here, I'm going to take the midtones to around 50%, which is the green. So what I'll do for this is we'll just bring it up a little bit, something like that. And that'll do. I will also do that on this clip. You could copy it across, but it's only going to take literally a couple of seconds. There you go. So we'll hide that now. And that's basically it. We've now colour corrected. I mean, look at it. And we didn't actually look at the image, the brightness, like when you're in Lightroom and you look at a photograph, you just adjust the brightness to what you preserve as being correct. But you can, again, when you're in Lightroom or something like that, use your histogram at the top of the screen. Because you may think that your contrast looks great, but if you look at your histogram, you might clearly see that your shadows are totally and utterly lost. But if you want to do that and you've got a calibrated screen and you don't care that your shadow's lost, that's fine. But in this, because I know that when I use this drone for weddings, I want everything to be as nicely exposed as possible. And I think if we just look at that there and we go full screen, I think it's a gorgeous exposure. By the way, look at it, no stabilisation. It's just hovering there. It's now turning round us. I mean, look how There's no wobble whatsoever. It looks absolutely spot on. You would do this same procedure for 70D footage, any footage where you'd edited the picture style, turn the contrast down, the saturation down, and the sharpness. This is how to fix it. Now, I have only shown you in Final Cut Pro X. If you want to know how to do it in Premiere Pro, put a message down below and I'll do it in Premiere Pro. But if you're a Premiere Pro user and you've watched this, you will understand what you would use in Premiere Pro to achieve the same thing. Thanks for watching. Please comment and subscribe.